In order to facilitate the transformation of education, our leaders need additional support in their spaces. The Ministry of Education has recognized the need for non-teaching deputies in our large primary schools. And in 2022-2023, we were able to secure 5 non-teaching deputy principal posts. They're at Keon Primary, Tucker Clark Primary, Beach Allen, Dr. William Connor, and Sandy Point Primary Schools. As I said before, the Ministry of Education has some talented and dedicated individuals who contribute to the overall well-being of our fraternity. So this morning, part of my duty is to introduce our new leaders who were promoted in January of this year and this September. So some of them started in January, so we didn't get a chance to welcome them. So we're going to do that today as well. Starting from the Education Planning Division, Mrs. Carla Diamond is now the Chief Education Planner, and she's also a member of our senior leadership team. Please give her a round of applause. In Education Services, Mrs. Janelle Jacobs is a Senior Education Officer. And Mrs. Angela Adams-Matthew joined the ranks of Education Officer. Moving to our schools, starting with Keon High, both Mrs. James and Mr. Benjamin have retired. And I thank them for their years of sterling service. Let's give them a round of applause in their absence. Taking the helm as principal will be Miss Tracy Watley, and she will be ably assisted by Mr. Gavin Blake, who began his tenure as deputy principal in January of this year. At Keon Primary, serving as principal since January of this year is Mr. Javon Cannonier, and he will be ably assisted by Miss Mikayan Smith Mitchum, Mrs. Mikayan Smith Mitchum. At Bastia High School, we have Mr. Backus, who was promoted to the principal in January. Mr. John Samuel has retired, so let's give him a round of applause and recognize his sterling service. And therefore, this September, assisting Mr. Backus will be Miss Sharima Collins. Mr. Danton Esdale, he joins the assessment team as assessment coordinator for mathematics. Give him a round of applause, please. At the Washington Archibald High School, home of the Wildcats, Mr. Thomas, what you're going to say, you need to answer that. So we have a new principal, and her name is Miss Rolene Taylor. Mrs. Joanne Sargent, she joins the curriculum team as subject coordinator for TVET, sorry. Give her a round of applause, please. At Beach Allen, Mrs. Jamila Bristol Brown will be ably assisted in September by her new deputy, Miss Bambi Peets. At Dean Glasswood Primary School, joining the staff and taking the helm as principal is Miss Nayoka Adams. And she, of course, will be assisted by Miss Bazzi. At Irishtown Primary School, joining the staff as principal of this institution is Mrs. Chanel Byron Cassius. Mrs. Avenel Carey Freights joined our curriculum team as subject coordinator for social studies. Give her a round of applause, please. Dr. William Connor Primary School, Mrs. Jessica Jeffers will assume the role of non-teaching deputy, so she'll be assisting Miss Jean Nisbet Body. And Miss Tamisha Sutton is now the supervisor of Victoria Road Preschool. Give her a round of applause. She's in ECD now. At Cotton Thomas Comprehensive School, this year Cotton Thomas has 2 campuses, one in Bastia and one at Estridge. And therefore, this unique situation calls for a unique solution. So heading the Bastia campus, as you know, is Mr. Sylvester Dorr. Give him a round of applause. And he's ably assisted by Mrs. Brolia Ordain. Give her a round of applause, please. On the Estridge campus, we have Miss Mercy Adore. Let's hear it for her. And she's ably assisted by her deputy principal, Miss Catherine Morris. In early childhood, Ms. Travia Tyson and Mrs. Nadia Keynes-Broody, they have joined the resource teacher team at ECD. Give them a round of applause. Replacing these officers are Ms. Katie Francis and Ms. Olivia Johnson, respectively. Ms. Kimoy Francis takes up the helm as supervisor at Challengers Daycare Center. So give her a round of applause. And Mrs. Isilma Knight is now our parent advocate. We know that some of our parents struggle with parenting, the parenting process. And if we are to stem the tide of disciplinary issues that we face in our primary and secondary school, it means we must attack it at its root. So we have to attack it at the early childhood level. So she's going to be assisting our parents who we may consider to be at risk and need some additional help. So give her a round of applause, please.